Well, joining us now to discuss these stories in more detail is Arise News analyst EMMANUEL EFENI. Great to see you today.
Good afternoon, Leila. Good afternoon, Aaron.
And of course, yesterday, before the meeting happened, we were here speaking about what the possible outcome could be and what to expect. And now the meeting has happened. We've seen clips that have come out from it. We've heard what the president has had to say. What is your take on his take?
Well, the governors actually went there for a save-our-soul meeting because of the situation in the Northeast. Yes, the president was saying that apart from Borno, other states are enjoying peace. But I'm not too sure that all the governors sitting there will agree with him. Yes, they wouldn't have said that in as many words, but the insecurity is still widespread. But some of the take home from that meeting, clearly the need to equip not only the military, but also the police. Yes, because the police can also play a role, especially in those areas where they have cleared the Boko Haram. There's the need for proper security agency on ground. Since the military, they're operating this their super camp strategy. And for the police to do that effectively, such that these pockets of Boko Haram insurgents that come in, invade, burn down buildings, and steal food stuff and all that, they can be dealt with by the police. But for the police to be in a position to do that, you need to properly equip the police. There was a time in this country when the police was equipped to the extent that they had armored personnel carrier. At that time, during the period of President Shehu Shagari, the Inspector General of Police, then Sunday Adewusi, he was like any other service chief, ready for battle anytime. And I think it's a good development that the thinking is also in this direction to get the police properly equipped to be in a position to assist in the fight against insurgency. But the president also talked about paucity of funds, blaming that for the lack of adequate equipment for the military. Well, we're in a war situation. And when you're in a war situation, you go out to raise funds to prosecute that war. And that is how we should see this fight against the Boko Haram and ISWAP insurgents, because it's been a long time and they don't seem to be waning in their attacks.
All right, for more on this, let's also bring in security analyst and president of the Africa Security Forum, TEMITOPE OLODO. And TEMITOPE, I would like to just pick it up from the last statement of EMMANUEL EFENI here in the studio, who's talked about paucity of funds to fight Boko Haram. As it is right now, when you put that side by side with what Nigerians have been hearing in the last couple of weeks, unraveling about the spendings in the Niger Delta, how do we relate this, and how do Nigerians get convinced that truly the president wants to fight insurgency in the Northeast?
Thank you very much for having me. There's no doubt in my mind that the president has a good intention in dealing with the issue of insecurity in the country. I think the challenge we have is a combination of security, leadership gap, and more importantly, the equipment issue, which your correspondent has just clearly articulated. The challenge we have is that in order for us to be able to deal with the issue of insecurity in our country, we need to look at best practice around the world and see what other people are doing. And when you benchmark what Nigeria is doing, in comparison with other countries, you see that our security services are not fit for purpose. And they're not fit for purpose for many reasons, not just because they don't want to do the work they've been assigned to do, but also because they don't have the appropriate, equipment, and they don't have the leadership to actually address the challenges that is in the country.
It's a very worrying situation. And staying on you for just a second, TEMITOPE, I read your statements that came out in the media, whereby your organization is, or the Africa Security Council, is calling on the president to establish a presidential security council of experts and also a national tension management center. Tell us more about this idea. And would that also be at the choosing or prerogative of the president? Because I guess that's also something that's adding to the issue that we're facing now.
Exactly. It's just similar to the Economic Council that the president has, that they do not have a power of any kind, but they could advise the president. Terrorism is a modern war, and you need to fight it with modern equipment and people that are actually in the thick of it, that really understand what is happening. Before Nigeria even decided to have a terrorism law, I've been involved in de-radicalization, working for the Office for Security and Counterterrorism. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about another 1,000 Nigerians out there, you know, in Europe, in America, that are even much, 10 times better than me, that have a better understanding. And what the president needs to do is to bring in his experts to give advice, side by side with what the security agencies are giving. And then he could compare both notes and use that to address what he's doing. At the end of the day, when you look at it, you know, it's a mockery of our security agency and our country when you declare a curfew in an environment and yet people are going there to kill people. Where are these people coming from? Are they dropping from the moon and disappearing into a stargate? That is the challenge that we have. So we need to have a council of experts, individuals who are experts in different fields, coming together and advising the president based on what they could see on the ground and information they're getting from the ground. And if it aligns with what the service chiefs and the other people are saying, then the president will have a better informed position to give advice, to be able to do what he needs to do. But at the moment, I'm not confident that the president is getting appropriate security advice that he needs to be able to deal with this issue.
All right. I'd like to also, because TEMITOPE just mentioned security advice here, going by these days, what they call it, headline today, one of the bullet points here says, and it's actually even marked, the president also said it, intelligence shows army ought to do better. We all know that. Yes. But when is, because my question to you before you, when is enough when it concerning security chiefs in Nigeria?
Well, yesterday the president was also very candid when he said the intelligence available to him shows that the army is not doing enough.
We all know that.
I thought that should be enough reason to also look at the persons you have put in charge, i.e. the security chiefs. But that seemed to be a no-go area for the president, to remove his security chief, and that is his own prerogative, as it has been said over and over again. But if they are not doing enough based on intelligence, so the president is not short of information, intelligence from the field, apparently is getting enough of that to tell him that it's not happening. But the next step, perhaps he needs more expert advice, as Mr. OLODO has just posited, that perhaps a council of experts, wherever Nigeria can get that from, and indeed, Nigeria have the personnel, maybe not in Nigeria, outside the shores of this country, to bring together to perhaps give him better advice on how to deal with this situation. Because in a situation where you have also accepted that the army, they are not doing enough on ground, then some new thinking has to be into this fight against insurgency. It
is really worrying, and I'll come back to you now, Mr. OLODO, and ask you this question, because also stated in your report, I believe, you said that Nigeria's economy has lost about $10 billion to insecurity. I mean, in what time period are we looking at here? And how do you also react to recent reports that we've been getting that Al-Qaeda is shifting more into West Africa? What is your take on that intelligence?
I have no doubt about it. In fact, for most of the viewers who are quite familiar with the issue of Boko Haram split into different fashions, and one of the fashions that actually emerged from Boko Haram was one called Astra. And Astra operated for some time and disappeared. Suddenly, they reappeared again based on intelligence, and they actually reported in a Al-Qaeda newsletter that they were involved in the killings in southern Kaduna. That is a worrying trend. Now, if you have a tension monitoring system in place where you are looking at tensions across the nation and you are being advised appropriately and deploying security infrastructure to those things, then you'll be able to deal with it. The challenge we have, and it's a challenge, is that Boko Haram has a pool of recruitment, has a recruitment pool that is quite big. And Nigeria is not doing anything to deal with that recruitment pool. Not only that, Nigeria does not have a violence reduction strategy with an implementation plan to say, this is how we're going to reduce violence in our nation. This is what we're going to do, step A, step B, step C, so that we could measure the security infrastructure against those layout structure. And that is part of the problem that we have. It's a big problem, and the president needs to see it from that perspective.
All right, let's still talking insecurity in Nigeria. This is just coming in. There's a story about Catholic bishops in Enugu State saying in their words, and I quote, "Defend yourselves." And that's their message to all Nigerians. Has it gotten that bad in Nigeria that people should start thinking of self-help?
Well, we've heard of this kind of call severally.
Yeah.
Remember once General Tuflo Danjuma once told his people that if they wait for the Nigerian government to come and protect them, they'll be all dead.
Pick up what you can and defend.
Pick up what you have and defend themselves. But I think that is how bad it has gotten, that this kind of clamor and advocacy for people to resort to self-help is now coming from prominent Nigerians and groups like the Catholic bishops who met in Owerri. But again, that tells us that there's a lot to be done by the government, because the primary responsibility of government is to protect lives and property. And if persons are being killed in their homestead, you don't even need to go and fight a battle. Just sleeping in your home, you can be killed. And that is how bad it has gotten. So this call, I think, is something that the president should also find worrisome, that people don't seem to have faith in government anymore, to the extent that they are not advocating self-help.
It's a very worrying situation. Yes. And TEMITOPE, I'll come back to you now to see how you analyze that. The fact that so many Nigerians now are calling for that last resort to self-help. And you mentioned a violence reduction strategy as one of the ways in which government can start to show more seriousness about security in the country. But what else do we need to start looking at, short-term and medium-term, that is, to really tackle this problem?
I think it is important that we need to be innovative in the way we handle security. We can't continue the way we used to. Nigerian military can continue to be recruiting cooks and drummers. They need to start looking at modern ways, employing modern people. There are people in our IT system. See, we're talking of a country that have people that have developed apps and different technology. You don't need to go out of the country to get the people that you need to deal with the security challenges. And what we need is a more inclusive approach to managing security. When we're talking about community policing, we're talking about a situation where the police are giving the funds and the community manage their funds and tell them this is where we want you to deploy people to. That's how you build community confidence and reassurance in the security system. We're not doing that. And that's the reason why we need everybody to come together and look at this, because it is in our own interest. Of course, we all have a right under the Constitution to self-defense, but I will not encourage the proliferation of arms in Nigeria. Rather, I will even encourage the introduction of arms to private organizations who are registered by civil defense. That way, we'll be able to have the manpower to deal with insecurity if the Nigerian police do not have the numbers and the equipment to deal with it.
And TEMITOPE, just to go back to the question I had asked you before as well, the $10 billion that our economy is said to have lost due to insecurity, in what time frame?
Oh yeah, according to the global, they call them the Global Peace Index. They said Nigeria lost about 10 billion. That was in 2017, if my knowledge is accurate. Yes.
All right. Now, let's come back into the studio with EMMANUEL, and we've been looking at insecurity. Like we've said, we've looked at every ramification. And I want to, looking at what this president spoke about insecurity, and I still ask a question that bothers me as a Nigerian, looking at how things are actually playing out. How soon should we expect a response that will be able to, first of all, put the minds of those in the Northeast at rest, than before we even talk about the entirety of Nigeria?
Well, one of the cardinal programs of the president is to secure the country. He promised Nigerians that 5 years down the line, we are still seeing widespread insecurity. But one thing we must also take from this meeting, which Mr. OLODO alluded to, have to stop the recruitment of Boko Haram. They are recruiting in numbers. And that's one of the messages the Borno State governor and his counterpart from the Northeast region drummed in yesterday, that as we speak, these guys are recruiting. How do we engage these young people? Because some of the root causes, unemployment and drugs. So we also need to tackle these root causes. How do you engage the people? But in a situation where you don't have security, how do you expect people to even get to their farmlands, which is one of the issues they raised yesterday? So the president needs to sit down with his team and look at all the ramifications, see how we can curtail this fresh recruitment, because we cannot be radicalizing those who are, we call repentant insurgents, Boko Haram terrorists, and these terrorists, they are recruiting fresh hands into their ranks. That needs to be tackled, at least to bring down the level of new recruits into the ranks of the terrorists.
And Mr. EFENI, you mentioned the reintegration of Boko Haram members back into society. Let me head back to Mr. OLODO and actually ask you about that. It's something that we've been covering here on NEWSDAY and other programs on Arise News for weeks, yes. Something that's been very prevalent in the media, the fact that the government thinks it's okay to reintegrate members of Boko Haram back into society. Very worrying. How do you see this?
I think they got the concept completely wrong. I think it's important to draw the attention of your viewers to the fact that when UK was bombed in 2005, they realized that intelligence was not coordinated. So they created what they call the Office for Security and Counterterrorism and created what they call the 4 Ps. One of it is the Prevent Piece, which the de-radicalization project falls under, which I worked on that, and I had a budget of a pot of money that I give to communities, not military, not security agencies, communities who will identify individuals that are vulnerable to de-radicalization and then deconstruct them. Those individuals are completely different from individuals who have committed a crime. When you commit a crime, you go to prison and then you get de-radicalized in the prison. Two different things. Individuals can't just drop their arms and then you take them through a 4-month process and you say you've de-radicalized them. It doesn't work like that. They should look at examples in Morocco, look at examples in Saudi Arabia. None of them have done it that way. So I don't know where Nigeria is getting their own approach. And I'm a bit baffled by the methodology they are adopting. You need to have something called a channel process where you have community leaders involved and they will say, oh, these individuals are vulnerable. Can we help them? It might be psychological impact, a problem. It might be religious impact. If it's a religious problem, then you need somebody that is an imam that understands the Quran and will be able to deconstruct them as a result of the negative narrative they've gotten about the religion. If it's psychology, then you help them. How can you keep somebody's father and then you've not helped that one, and then you go and bring somebody else that you not give money to come and stay in the community? Nobody will accept them. And that's the problem with the system.
All right, many thanks to you, TEMITOPE, OLODO security expert, for joining us here on NEWSDAY. Okay, let's get back into the studio here. We can't talk about insecurity in Nigeria without talking about what is happening in Kaduna State. And we looked at it. A lot of people have said it has a religious dimension to it. Some say it has an ethnic dimension to it. That some say it's persecution. Some say the governor might be complicit in what is happening. Some say the governor might be folding his arms to it. How would you address this particular? What is really going on in Kaduna State at the moment?
Well, in as much as I would not want to say the governor Nasir El-Rufai is complicit, but he has not handled the situation very well. He doesn't seem to be on top of the situation, because if you have the governor of a state like Kaduna that is multi-ethnic, multi-religious, you also need to be proactive to anticipate some of these things. A situation where you hear from government spokesperson saying, "Oh, it's revenge killing," we know it's unacceptable. Because if you know it is revenge killing, it means you know the cause, you are in a position to prevent it. And a situation where curfew is declared and you still have marauders going around and killing people is also something that needs to be interrogated seriously. The security agencies that are meant to enforce the curfew, what have they been doing? Of course, the ethnic and religious dimension to it. The area we're talking about are mainly Christians that are inhabiting that area. The people that are being killed in those Zango Kataf area are Christians. So when people say, yes, the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, the Christian Association of Nigeria are saying that, look, Christians are being murdered, then they have a point, because the evidence on the ground shows that that is what is happening. But more worrisome is the fact that we have not been able to curtail this. And the fact that there are intelligence to show that terrorists from the Boko Haram and ISWAP are also infiltrating the killings in Kaduna and elsewhere in the Northwest.
That's all we can say.
It's also worrisome.
Thank you, Mr. EFENI. It certainly is.